When it comes to what I take inside of Crucible, inside of Destiny, just playing the game in general, I'm built different. I'm what some people would say, built stupid. I don't like the on-meta stuff. I find it to be kind of boring because I see it everywhere. Instead, I run the weird stuff. The stuff that nobody really knows how to deal with because they never fight it, but nevertheless, I will run away cackling into the wind because of the kills I snatched like a thief in the night. Today, I have 3 builds to review, one for each class, that became a little bit silly with today's patches. These are builds that are definitely off meta and a little unusual, but nevertheless builds that I think you will really enjoy. And in particular, there's a couple things in here that I'm actually a little scared is gonna get a little a little too strong. So let's jump straight into it here. We're gonna start with a Hunter build. Now, this Hunter build uses the Triton Vice and the Edge of Concurrence, the exotic Hunter glaive. Glaives in general have gotten much better, much to my surprise. If you're not aware, now they will passively recharge their shield energy at the cost of them not being able to deal quite as much damage, but they also will be able to fire further and a little bit faster, making them so much more consistent, and you can shoot into the melee a little bit quicker. But all of that really doesn't matter. The biggest change that came to glaives was that passive shield regeneration. With this little bit of passive shield regeneration, it basically means that every single fight, literally every single fight you will get into, will grant you a entry sort of bonus of a 30 to 50% damage resistance depending on what your opponent is using. Now, in most glaive situations, which we'll see towards the end of the video, this is fine. Ultimately, this doesn't do a whole lot for you as glaives fire too slow for you to really take advantage of it. Most of the time, you're gonna have to get an opening shot and sort of catch your opponent by surprise anyway. The glaive shot into melee on paper feels pretty good, but because glaive's damage has been reduced, the ability to glaive shot into an immediate follow-up with the melee doesn't actually do anything for you anymore. It's still going to be 2 follow-up shots, so it's kind of a waste of ammo. But this glaive, and all glaives like it, are rapid fire frames. Particularly the Edge of Concurrence is quite good because that little bit of passive regeneration allows you to pad out that last little bit of your exotic perk. In previous times, you would have to have landed at minimum 3 to 4 shots, depending on how many chest piece of Lucent Blades that you had equipped, in order to get that exotic perk to go. And when that exotic perk is going, this is one of those little off-meta tricks that nobody seems to use. It's a one-shot on anything, even a bubble, even a well. You gotta hit the Guardian, but it will kill them. It's incredibly powerful, and it jolts now. And it's AoE. It's insane! And it fires fast, which means that you're going to just out-TTK every single primary in the game, and even special weapons are gonna really struggle to keep up with you. The exotic Edge of Concurrence is absolutely worth chasing. But what about the Triton Vice and the rest of the build? Well, Triton Vice still does not seem like it has a spot here. We were more using this just to kind of test it out, and yeah, at least in PvP, Triton's Vice is definitely not worth it. Maybe you'll see a little bit more value in PvE where getting surrounded isn't so much of a death threat, but it's just okay for now. We ran this with a Blink Hunter with Flow State and Lethal Current. It worked beautifully. I cannot recommend, at the very least, grabbing a rapid fire glaive and giving this a shot. You will not be disappointed. I promise you. Build 2 is a build that I was a little bit nervous wouldn't actually see any play. This is a build I've used in the past. It uses a Cryosthesia and a high impact sniper on a Stasis Warlock. Stasis Warlocks on the whole have gotten a lot better. There's a lot of consistency things with things like their Cold Snap grenades, which is the Warlock's best friend, and their Penumbral Blast is now a little bit more forgiving. That by itself is very good. The Warlocks, the Stasis Warlocks, I would argue, did not need any sort of buffs whatsoever. They were perfectly fine as is, but Bungie saw fit in their infinite wisdom to make us even stronger. You are going to see Stasis Warlocks, I guarantee you that. This build tries to get as much freezes on the field as possible. Previously, this was Osmiomancy gloves, but we decided to try this out with the Ballidrose. Ballidrose, the new exotic warlock gauntlets that look like you've got 4 arms like Popeye. You know the ones. Here's one on screen. This exchanges the lethality of the Osmiomancy gloves and the frequency of those Cold Snap grenades in exchange for augmenting your Frost Pulse Rift, the rift that freezes people, which also got better by the way, to now also granting you a 50 health overshield and a small bump to your weapon's damage. Most weapons aren't gonna really feel this that much, but in particular on a Cryosthesia, which normally will not be able to kill unless you land all 4 headshots, this is noticeable. Not to mention just a flat overshield going into a fight, much like a Titan's Void Barricade, is incredible at allowing you to just cheese a gunfight. The uptime of your Rift is a little bit slower now, as all of our mods have gotten a little bit nerfed. Things like kickstarts, grenade, melee, and particularly utility kickstart aren't gonna come up as often unless you have a charge, but I still strongly recommend you give this a shot. This is a fantastic team support tool, and in particular something like Trials of Osiris, where just giving your whole team a total of 150 extra health will absolutely net you more kills than you would ever have in the past. Give this one a try. This one's a little bit more kind of on current course for meta stuff, and Cryosthesia is still a war criminal that for some reason has not been held accountable. It's a lot of fun. Our last build is a build that I'm the most hesitant on, not because I think it's going to be too strong, but because I feel like it's still not quite hitting the mark. This is more of a PvE orientated change, and this build you will see, I think, actually see some significant play in PvE. This is using the Edge of Action, the Titan's exotic glaives that create a bubble, which also got a buff to now grant you a small bonus damage to your weapons, which is great. It's like literally like a mini bubble now. The health of the bubble got slightly reduced, but what a lot of people don't know about this bubble is that it'll also work with the Helm of Saint 14, meaning that not only will you blind targets inside of it, but you can take your overshield outside of the bubble. And because glaives now passively generate that guard energy, that shield energy, you're able to get this up a lot more frequently. Just simply running around the glaive is making progress towards that goal. Also, something I forgot to mention with the hunters is that now when you get your exotic perk to proc and you swap it over to that alt fire, you'll immediately get an extra bonus round, meaning that it doesn't actually cost you anything to throw this thing down. It is the freest thing you'll ever see. My hesitation with this is, despite us always having a glaive energy to go in and actually joust with most stuff, the fire rate on this is significantly slower. It does deal slightly more damage, but that break point between fire rate and damage doesn't make up for it. You're gonna have to be you're gonna have to take your corners a lot more carefully, because it just doesn't have the time to kill to put somebody on their butt quick enough. It is a little bit more consistent against things like overshield, something that the first glaive build struggled with a little bit. If you had a target that had any sort of healing or overshield at all, they'd struggle, and you have to kill them with at least 3 shots. This one doesn't have that problem, but the flat lower TTK of this really hurts this weapon in general. We ran this with a auto rifle. This is just a 450 Great Tech Werewolf with swashbuckler and under pressure. Nothing too fantastic, but the big thing here, like I said, is to focus this more on the PvE side of things, where you're going to be able to get this glaive shield up a lot more frequently and buff your team up. There are so many more ways of getting an overshield. You can very easily play a sort of support tank with this setup, and I think you'll have a good time. But those are just my first bits of build testing. Please drop in the comments down below if you have a build that you would like me to try. I am so excited when we get these big sandbox changes, because there's so much to look out for. So if you got something like that, let me know. We've got seasonal Christmas themed sweaters if that's something you're interested in. Subscribe, bless your faces, and deuces.